Breakfast with the Outsiders, Chapter 22. My first impression was that Mr. Appleton was an ex-Army guy. We had a lot of them in the area. He had that very good posture of the Army men and also the haircut. His haircut was the way Army men let their hair grow out. They didn't quite want the buzz. Maybe they felt they didn't deserve to wear a buzz anymore, but they didn't want their hair flopping over either. Mr. Appleton seemed to tolerate the little kids, but I didn't have the sense he liked them one bit. Robbie, on the other hand, was a family guy. You could see that straight away. He looked like he was in heaven, surrounded by all the little kids. But it was the way he handled Ulysses that won me over. After Nico went for medical supplies, the kids gathered around Robbie and Luna on the ground. Robbie was learning the names of the kids and introducing them to Luna. I saw him watching Ulysses, waiting for it to be Ulysses' turn to introduce himself. There we go. And Ulysses said, "Soy Ulysses," and Robbie just reached out and grabbed him and hugged him. Spanish words poured out of the two of them, and soon Ulysses was crying and Robbie was crying too, and just holding him in a one-armed hug, while the other arm held onto Luna, who decided she should begin washing their two faces with her tongue. Ulysses apparently had a lot to say this whole time, and only hadn't said much because none of us could understand him. Why I had chosen to study French in high school, I will never understand. Nico returned with the supplies. He knelt down in front of Mr. Appleton and cut a slit on the cuff of his new chinos. Nico began splitting them up the leg. There were 2 wounds on Mr. Appleton's leg. Near the ankle was a horrible gash. I had never seen anything like it. "Josie, maybe we should take the kids away," I suggested feebly. The wound looked like the guts of a fish, if that makes any sense. A big slash with pieces of flesh hanging out of it, green and yellow oozing flesh. It wasn't bleeding, but you could see lines of red running under the skin, going up the leg, following the course of his veins. The lines were red and also a bruised kind of green in places. The blood was coming from a different wound, this one above the knee. It looked like a bite, kind of. There was a chunk of flesh missing. "What happened to you?" Chloe demanded. "Razor wire," Mr. Appleton said. Nico poured hydrogen peroxide on the ankle wound, and it hissed out loud. "Come on, guys," I said, feeling a little woozy. "Let's give Nico some space to work. Everyone, come help me in the kitchen." There were protests and awes, but the stink coming out of that ankle gash was pretty ripe, and eventually me, Josie, Sahalia, and Alex got the little kids rounded up and led them to the kitchen. They were like a bunch of crickets, hopping and jumping all around, so excited by the arrival of grown-ups and a dog. "Baptiste," I said, calling him over to me, "we need to fix something special." "2 breakfasts?" he asked. "Well, the first one was Sundays, for God's sake." "Don't take the Lord's name in vain," he said quickly. Then, "Yes, we'll make a feast of Thanksgiving, but for breakfast." Baptiste ran ahead to the food aisles. Chloe went with him to help. I guess they were starting to get along, somewhat. I told Alex and Sahalia to throw away all the Sunday stuff. I got the other little kids busy making banana nut muffins under Josie's supervision, while Baptiste and I cranked in the kitchen. In just under 45 minutes, Baptiste and I prepared roasted vegetable quiches, hash browns, a kind of fruit salad Baptiste told me was called ambrosia, and the last 4 packages of bacon. Nico led the men into the kitchen just as the coffee finished brewing. Mr. Appleton was now equipped with crutches, which I hadn't known we even had. "Ay, Dios!" Robbie exclaimed. "Look at all this food!" "And we made muffins for you," shouted Max. "And mine is the biggest," shouted Chloe. The little kids were all a bopping again, all yelling at the same time. And then Luna started barking. "Shh, you guys," Josie said, but they didn't listen. "Quiet! Quiet!" Mr. Appleton shouted. The kids shut up immediately. The silence was tense. "I'm sorry," Mr. Appleton said. "It's just, I'm a little shell-shocked. It was very chaotic outside, and I'm not used to so much noise." "We understand," said Josie. "You've been through a lot." "Please sit down and I'll get you 2 some food," I said. "Are you the chef?" Robbie asked me. Ah, yes, said Mr. Appleton. I could see he was straining to be jovial, trying to recover. Who can we thank for this food? I'm Dean. I do most of the cooking, I said, but Batiste here is the one who put this together. Robbie shook our hands heartily. Then Mr. Appleton shook them as well. His hand was papery but strong. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Appleton said to us. Yes, sir, Batiste said. I'm in charge of the food, I said, so I guess I will be the one who loads you up with provisions. I'll be sure to give you lots of good stuff for when you leave. Somehow I felt strongly compelled to remind them that they'd be leaving sooner rather than later. Maybe it was because they were eyeing the food like animals. Everyone ate, but those two men really ate. Halfway through their meal, Robbie stopped eating and said an impromptu prayer in Spanish. He winked at Ulysses and then explained to all of us, I was so hungry I forgot to give thanks to El Señor for sending us here to this little paradise of a greenway filled with angelitos. Amen, Batiste said. I'm always telling these sinners we should pray before each and every meal. Robbie chucked Ulysses under the chin. The boy shined like a new minted penny. Well, now we said thanks, so I'm going to eat more. There was laughter at this, and I gave him thirds.